Welcome to the Dr. Donna podcast, here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Innovative, evidence-based recovery that helps to identify intergenerational trauma, allowing for freedom and embracement of the healing process. Today, episode 115, Life on Life's Terms, Part 2. And now your host, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee.
And this is Dr. Donna. I've been talking to you about life on life's terms, and I wanted to continue with a situation that I've been going through myself in terms of having to accept and deal with life on life's terms. And if you heard last time, it was my dear friend of 50 years had died. And, you know, I feel fortunate that I was here, and I feel fortunate that I was helping to take care of her. But before I start on the next part of that experience, I would like to also remind you that the All Recovery group in Ireland has asked me to speak to their worldwide, at their worldwide meeting, to be a speaker at that worldwide meeting. And I'll probably take questions and answers after my speech. But it is, if you want to go to that meeting, you can email me at healingyourfamilylegacy at gmail.com, and I will send you the link. But I think I didn't tell you last time that it is going to be on April 15th at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So it's going to be at different times all over the world. So if you want to know what time it is for you outside the States, because if you're in the States, you can probably work that out. But if you're in other parts of the world, you might need some help with that, and I can help you with that too. So, I wanted to, that last time I was talking about stuff and pets and kids that needed to go somewhere once you die. And you'll notice I don't say that past thing. When people pass, it's like I hear people say, "Oh, I'm so sorry she passed." You know, I like to say what it is, and I guess that's okay, but I say when people die, because that means that to me is more of a, somebody dies, they're done with this world. That's it. And it's over. And in my world, I have no idea what happens next. I have mentioned before that I think it's not really ours to, I mean, we ponder it because we're human beings, but to like set your life up or live your life as if this life doesn't count as much as the quote in air quotes, quote unquote, next life. People live their lives in this life because they think in the next life it'll be better, or they'll be forgiven, or whatever it is. We don't know what, quote unquote, the next life is going to be. And when I saw my friend die, I was brought back to the reality. And I live my life this way all the time anyway, but it's not consciously. Generally, I'm thinking about other things. But it brought back to my consciousness that what we have is now. And so, you know, when you think about what I have now, this moment in time that I have now, this is when you really want to make the most of what you have now. And, you know, my whole life's work was based on helping people come back to the now so that they could make the most out of their lives now, not in the next life, whatever that is, because it's not really our business, is it? You know, what's going to happen in the next life is not our business. And when we wander in there and set our lives up in some way thinking that somehow we're going to impact that, we are absolutely in spiritual boundary failure, in my opinion. Because whoever your creator is wanted you to know what that would be, if in fact is anything. You would know. We'd all know. It would be like, oh, here's the newspaper. Here's what's going to happen in the next life. It isn't like that. And I know because I grew up Mormon that, well, it's all about faith and it's all about this and it's all about that. Well, that's fine to have. I absolutely support that 100%. What I don't support is living life in this life as if somehow you're going to impact later. What you have is now. And when I say it was brought back to me, it's like I feel like I've been a hostage the last 3+ weeks because I haven't really left either a hospital room or an apartment where someone is, either sick or dying. And, I tried really hard. I mean, there were some days where I walked up the hill to the hospital and, got in about 4 miles. But if you've been listening to me, you know that that's nothing next to what I usually do every day. And I even had my son bring over some 8-pound weights from his gym so that I could work out. And then I got sinus infection, making it really hard to breathe. So working out really wasn't in the cards. However, as all things do, this will pass. And that's true. It won't die. It'll pass. It'll be over. I'll be back in bed. I can get back in my own bed. I won't be on the floor. I'm not even going to do any Swedish death cleaning. When I get back right away, I'm going to feel better. I'm going to get rest. I'm going to take some small walks. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to do the things that I've been telling you to do in order to keep yourself healthy. Self-care is job one. And yes, I have mentioned before that when you have a new baby at home or a sick child or, it's like the child will take priority, necessarily so. But when you are taking care of a loved one, they're probably going to have a priority, at least in crisis. And so you might not have an opportunity to do this kind of self-care that you'd like. Okay? Like, I don't usually just have yogurt for dinner, but there was nothing else. And I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave her. So, it's that kind of thing. So I will do self-care. And I think self-care is, I absolutely believe without self-care, everything else is irrelevant because you won't live your life to your fullest. Without self-care, you're not going to be able to walk around. You won't be able to ride your bike, go hiking, go swimming, do all the things that people do in our world today when they are vibrant and healthy. And so self-care is job one. And I really, there are a couple of people in this facility that I've been in that, we actually rented an apartment in this facility because, we needed somewhere to put our own stuff. And rather than rent a hotel, We rented a place in here, and there's the way it's set up. You can walk and walk and walk and walk and walk. And so sometimes we would walk around in here and walk and walk and walk. And you could tell people who really practice self-care. It was really great to see elderly people walking around too. I got to know some of them pretty well because I was walking, they were walking, we have conversations. Some of them offered to help out. That was nice, to help out with changing the kitty box and making sure that there was food for the kitty. If we needed to have a errand run, they did that. But we wouldn't have met any of those people if we weren't out in this world. It's easy to get swallowed up in TV, in news. Oh, geez, there's something every day. Even, reading a book is a good thing. Even watching the news and TV is good. But if that is all you're doing, you are not, you might be using your brain. Like if you're reading a book, you're probably using your brain. And watching TV, you might be using your brain. But the rest of your body, which is really important, is not getting what it needs if you're not moving it. And I know because of my age that it doesn't move like it used to, even though I work really hard at, trying to make sure that it does. I don't bound out of bed in the morning. I've learned to sit up in bed after I do some exercises and stretches, sit up on the side of my bed and stand up with both feet on the ground. I've learned that that's one of the ways that people fall and break their hip. So, job one, please take care of yourself. Exercise, eat right, have friends, exercise your brain. If you don't do it, it won't serve you well as you age. I had a interesting conversation with one of the people that live here one day when I was walking around, and Deb and I would take turns doing this. I'd walk around, then she'd walk around, then I'd walk around. And this more elderly than me woman came out of her apartment, and she was on a walker, and she was, kind of moving along slowly. And she said, hello. And I said, hello. And we got in this little conversation, and she said, I used to really, I really miss not climbing mountains and not, riding my bike and things. She said, I can tell that you exercise. And I said, I do. I exercise every day that I can, which isn't much right now, but here I am walking around. And she said, I was always athletic all my life, but I did some athletic things where I got hurt a lot. She said, now look, I can hardly get around except with this walker. And so she, shook her little finger at me and said, so just keep walking. And I said, oh, I do. I walk as much as I can. But, every so often I see some news article that says, the best exercise for you is walking. And, it is. Now, yes, you might have sore knees sometimes or sore hips once in a while. But if you do it with good shoes, if you walk on surfaces that aren't just cement all the time, it's like it should serve you well for a long time. Get your heart going. You breathe deeply. One of the things about walking that you might not do otherwise, hiking, you do this too, but you become aware of the world around you. When you're walking or hiking, you can look around and see what's going on. You notice the birds are singing, or you notice, like I said, the magnolia trees are blooming, and they're blooming more today than they were yesterday. And you might notice, one of my favorite things is when I'm walking, and especially if I'm walking in the desert or the mountains, I notice the animal tracks. I'm really good at animal tracks. I can say, oh my goodness, it looks to me like there was a cougar through here recently. So I think I'll just sing a little bit and make sure they know I'm here. Things like that. It's like you wouldn't notice these things. But what that does for your brain, it gives it an opportunity to, notice and think about things without you really consciously saying, oh, my brain is thinking about birds singing now. Oh, one day I almost came face to face with a red-headed woodpecker, which are pretty uncommon. I mean, they're rare, okay? And I came walking around this corner on a trail, and geez, it was right there in front of my face. And that was so exciting, but I noticed all these things because I walk all the time. I notice when, it's like somebody just pulled a bush out of their yard, or, somebody hasn't been home for a while, or somebody just got, somebody has neighbors, that have friends, or, when you're walking, your brain is taking in all this information. It's processing it. It's accommodating it, and it's continual when you're walking around or hiking. Now, I liked biking until I got in a biking accident, and that was the end of that. But, I still ride my bike once in a while, but it makes me nervous because cars don't notice you sometimes. But when I'm riding my bike, I have to be focused on riding my bike. I'm probably not looking around because I don't want to crash. Skiing. When I'm skiing, I don't downhill ski anymore. But I cross-country ski and I snowshoe. Snowshoeing's, very similar to hiking. You can just take in what's going on around you. Think about it, be aware of it, appreciate it so much. But when you're skiing, you probably should watch where you're going. Pay attention to what to going downhill at a fast clip, that you're not going to hit anybody, that you're not going to go into a tree well, you have to be focused on what you're doing when you're doing those kinds of sports. And I'm not saying don't do them, but I'm saying add walking into your life because it exercises everything. And, it's good for your body in every way. And if you do it with the right shoes and on, surfaces that are friendly, you probably can do it for the rest of your life. So, when my friend died and I felt that energy leave the room, I thought, her life is over. Fortunately for her, because I've known her forever, is that she had a really full life. She had good friends. She had, I think if I were to ask her today, is there anything that you would change? I don't think she would really come up with anything. And that is the question that you might want to ask yourself, even once a year. Maybe you could ask it on your birthday. Maybe you could ask it on New Year's or something. But the question is, if I were to die today, would I have regrets? We talked about this when I talked about this when I was talking about New Year's resolutions. It's good, kind of like death cleaning. Take into account your life periodically and say, is there anything that is undone? Is there anything that I want to, work on, to finish, to experience, to add to my life? Do I want my life when it's at the end to say I've lived a full life? I've lived a life that is meaningful. I asked my friend, because, she wants to be buried in my backyard. Okay, that might sound weird. Okay. But I have a memorial tree in my backyard because during the pandemic, when friends and family would die, I couldn't go to their memorials. I couldn't go to their funerals, and because of the pandemic, and I'm at high risk. So I didn't want to have that be my last thing. And so I planted a beautiful tree in my backyard that I call the memorial tree. And when people died, I would put, I'd go around and find a stone or something that had a word on it, that has a word on it, that would describe either how I felt about the person or who I thought they were as a person or who they might think they were as a person, something that was related to the person. And then I put these stones under the tree. And so, my friend Pat said, I want to go under your tree. And so I said, well, what do you want your stone to say? And she says, I lived life as a rebel. And she did. Like I said, she was significantly older than me. But when she came out of the closet in the 50s, she came roaring out and never went back in. And that wasn't a friendly thing to do then. But she never quit being who she was. And she did live life as a rebel. And even in her work as superintendent of, 3 state hospitals, director of two state mental health agencies, state mental health agencies, not like one here and one there, but the whole state, is that her focus was on making sure that prejudice and bias didn't have a voice wherever she worked. And she didn't make any bones about it. If you had prejudice or bias against the people that she felt personally responsible for, all those people, you didn't have a job. She fired you on the spot. And that was her life. And she didn't make a lot of friends that way, in terms of if you were a person who was hateful and biased and prejudiced, you didn't like her very much. That was okay with her. That you probably weren't her friend anyway. But, she had some enemies, because when she'd come in and see that somebody was abusing patients, boy, they were out of there in no time. And that might have meant that they had been there for 20 years and thought they'd retire there. And then, nope, you're not. You abuse patients, your history. And so she did live life as a rebel. And in that way, not as a rebel, like, wearing a hat around saying, whatever. She didn't wear it on her chest. She acted on it. She made good decisions in her life that impacted other people in a positive way. And that is what I would like. I would like to, at the end of my life, say that most of my life, hopefully, I lived it in a way that would impact people in a positive way. And, I've been out since I knew that I needed to come out. And I never went back either. It's like, oh no, that was in the early 70s. Yeah, no, I'm not going back in that closet. That's a bad place to live. But, to live life as a rebel in terms of standing up for people, refusing to accept bias, refusing to accept prejudice, refusing to accept hatred as an excuse for anything. That's a positive way to live your life. And so I'm dedicating this last podcast before I go on to the next one, but this is the last time I'll be talking about this in this way, is that I'm dedicating this to Pat. And I hope that all of us can take and learn something from this courageous woman who was a dyke and didn't mind letting you know from the 50s on. Even in assisted living, she wore her keys on her jeans. Just like the 50s. It was great. And she walked around and people loved her because they knew exactly what you got. And I think that's a good way to live. Didn't put it in people's face, didn't yell at them, lived it. And so, I'm going to put a rock that says, live life as a rebel. In my backyard, for my friend Pat. I hope you can all make it to the meeting on April 15th.
Thank you for listening to the Dr. Donna podcast here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Dr. Donna podcast is copyright 2023 Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.
Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The SoulWorks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. SoulWorks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the SoulWorks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.